And now finally, Roman numeral 4, who makes foreign policy? Answer, the government. I don't know why your book really gets into these hypothetical questions that are all basically answered by the title of the class that you're taking. You know, the one you've been doing this entire year, but whatever. So, foreign policy is primarily the realm of the executive branch for a number of reasons. The president can act much faster than Congress, he's much more unified than Congress, both of which are very significant, especially when you're dealing with crisis foreign policy. You know, when the armies are invading and the bombs are dropping, you don't need Congress arguing amongst itself. You need one person who's in charge making decisions. So obviously at the head of the executive branch, you've got the president, but the president has advisors as well. The NSC, for example. The NSC is the National Security Council. This is the president's closest group of advisors when it comes to foreign policy. The NSC is made up of the president, the vice president, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Secretary of State, and the Secretary of Defense. It's basically the brain trust of foreign policy, if you will. These guys get together in order to formulate foreign policy, in order to deal with crises and so forth. So again, they are the primary advisors to the president on issues of foreign policy and so forth. At the end of the day, though, he's the one who makes the final decision. But the NSC, again, is the main group of advice. The next two, the Department of State and the Department of Defense. Department of State and Department of Defense are both cabinet-level positions. The difference between the two is that one is diplomacy and one is military. The Department of State is the one responsible for more diplomacy, for negotiations, for dealing with countries on a political standpoint. Department of Defense is the one that's responsible for the military. The Secretary of Defense is the one that oversees military personnel, equipment, operations, and so forth. They don't personally command the military, but again, their job is to manage the military, if you will. And again, since that's the military, it's much more the aggressive end of things. On the other hand, the Secretary of State is the chief diplomat. The Secretary of State is the one that's responsible for reaching out negotiations to other countries in order to set up sort of strategic foreign policy and so forth. So Secretary of Defense is structural defense. Secretary of State is more strategic planning and so forth. They generally work together towards the same goal because, again, it's sort of carrot and stick. You've got the one hand, you know, the Department of State that's responsible for being nice and polite and so forth, and then you've got the Secretary of Defense, who's the one more responsible for the aggressive foreign policy, the military, and so forth. Part of the Defense Department is the Joint Chiefs. The Joint Chiefs of Staff are the leaders of the four branches of the military: Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines. Yes? Someone back me up on this one? Yes. Commandant of the Marine Corps would be the last one. The Joint Chiefs advise the Secretary of Defense. The Secretary of Defense then advises the President. The Chairman of the Joint Chiefs is also an advisor, I believe, on the NSC, because the NSC is President, Vice President, State, Defense. So, yes, the Joint Chiefs show up at the NSC, but they're just advisors only. The Joint Chiefs, again, take orders from the Secretary of Defense and from the President, but their job is, again, a bit more specific. That's all. They're just narrower. Each one of the members of the Joint Chiefs has their own branch of the military to deal with and so forth. They are less planning and more practicality. In other words, the President and the Secretary of Defense are the ones who say, you know, look, we're going, you know, we hate Iran, we're going to go in and we're going to destroy them. Then it goes to the Joint Chiefs as to how exactly they're going to do that. The Joint Chiefs are the ones responsible for the actual planning out and so forth. So they're the ones more involved with the actual boots on the ground, if you will, whereas the Secretary of Defense and the President are more pie in the sky, this is our large-scale plan. The next one, you've got the intelligence community. The intelligence community is the one responsible for gathering foreign information, foreign intelligence, espionage, things like that. There are multiple groups that fall into the intelligence community, but the primary one, or at least the most famous one, is the CIA. CIA stands for the Central Intelligence Agency. They are the group most responsible for gathering data. The CIA is, again, basically espionage. It was created after World War II, after we figured out how much fun spying was during the war, and we kept it on ever since then. The CIA, for the most part, operates with very little oversight. The only real rules for the CIA is they are not allowed to work within the United States, and they are not allowed to assassinate anyone. Other than that, it's pretty much carte blanche. They can do whatever they'd like to. The CIA works with other groups like the FBI and the NSA, but the CIA is the primary foreign intelligence gathering. The last group that falls under this category is the Department of Homeland Defense, or Homeland Security, rather. The Department of Homeland Security was created after September 11th. It's the newest cabinet position. It's designed to do what it sounds like, defend the homeland. It deals with issues of terrorism and so forth within the homeland. Homeland Security, though, is kind of an odd duck because rather than making new agencies, they just sort of combined a whole bunch of smaller agencies like the Secret Service, the Coast Guard, the Transportation Safety Administration. They all got sort of grouped together there. So Homeland Security, again, their main job is supposedly to protect the homeland, but it's a weird combination of agencies. Hence part of the reason why it's not altogether that powerful yet. Um, okay, the last thing then under this one would be Congress. What does Congress do when it comes to foreign policy? Remember that Congress is the only group that can declare war, and so that's kind of significant. And also, thanks to the War Powers Act, they can pull back troops if the president doesn't declare war within 30 days. But beyond that, again, most of foreign policy falls in the hands of the president because the president can move much faster than Congress, so that's the reason why we do it that way. Okay, that takes care of all the important stuff. If for some reason you've reached the end of these videos and it's the middle of a class period, or God forbid, you have an entire class period left to go, you can feel free to use the rest of the time as study hall and so forth, and I will come back and pick up with you at Roman numeral 5 whenever I return. So I'm going to bed because I'm incredibly tired. Goodbye!